Hey, Beastista here, and this is going to be our last video of this season of VDL as Bautista Butterfreeze. So in the last video, if you watched it, I was going over the ways in which I was hoping to get Crustle to be the kill leader of the VDL. And so without further ado, we can see that I ended up getting Crustle the kill lead of the season, of the league. So if we see here, I ended up getting 5 more kills than the second place, which is Celesteela. And so I didn't even, I got 8 kills in my final match in order to get this, and I only ended up needing 4, so I made there with a nice margin, and so I feel pretty happy about that. I think it was a really nice achievement, and it makes me feel like my season ended up doing really well despite not quite having as good of a record as I would have liked. In addition, I think it's really cool because Crustle not only was a tier 4 Pokemon, it also was my last pick Pokemon, so my 11th overall pick. And so it's really cool that a Pokemon that I value very lowly and everyone else valued really lowly not only was very good, but was actually the kill leader for the entire league. So going into here, we see this is my schedule, and this is how I ended up. If you look at the top, I ended up going 3 and 5 with a -3 score. So overall, not bad. I was very close to getting the 4-4. So some of the notable matches were week 1 against the Old English Escus. We were an incredibly close matchup, and it entirely came down to what I would say is a 50-50 decision role, which is I had an option to kill 1 of 2 Pokemon, and if either of them protected, I didn't get the kill, and I guessed wrong, and the rest is history. It was a very close match, game to 3. Week 2 was another one that was very noteworthy. I went 1 and 2, and this was a hot mess. So what ended up happening is I was intending to bring a weak armor Crustle in order to activate my own weak armor. What ended up happening was I forgot to save. And so the Crustle I brought had a negative attack nature, it had the wrong ability, and it had either an incorrect distribution of EVs or no EVs at all. And so game 1, I Aqua Jet my own Crustle to give it a weakness policy activate to outspeed an Arcanine, and I realized that it did not have weak armor, and I did not get the speed boost, and I lost horribly. My opponent was kind enough to let me change the ability on my Crustle between game 1 and game 2, and that helped a lot, and I was able to get game 2 of the match. But Crustle having terrible EVs or no EVs and having a bad nature definitely ended up hurting me, and I ended up losing that match, which I definitely feel like I could have won if I would have actually bred my Crustle properly, which was the main sweep for that. Match 3. So week 3 week 3 and 5, I definitely felt like I lost pretty handedly. Week 3, I believe, was the match in which my opponent had a Registeel, and I did not adequately prepare for it, and Registeel basically single-handedly swept me after they killed one of my Pokemon that was my main way to kill it. So week 3, 5, and 6, I definitely felt like I was either out prepared or my opponent had a notably better team than me. And I feel like if I had some better gameplays, I probably could have made some of those 1-2s instead of 0-2s. And I may have even been able to win, but I definitely think that I was out prepared, or like I said, they had better teams. The week 2, I definitely think I had a very good chance to win, and then week 1, I think I had a very good chance to win. And if I would have gotten one of those first 2 weeks, I would have ended up with a 4-4, which would have been really great because that was more my goal going into the season. So overall, I did pretty well. I feel like I could have done better, but I definitely feel like I had played against some very good teams and pretty good coaches, and I was lucky to get some wins. I definitely think that some wins were based on me making some good reads, or my opponent not preparing for something that caught them off guard. And so this is my team. I did not make a single transaction in the entire league, and so this is the team I drafted from the beginning. So first things first that I think is noteworthy in what I learned from this draft is that Crustle I brought 16 times, which is notably more than any other Pokemon that on my team. In addition to it, it got 29 kills, which is not only vastly more than anything else on my team, it was also the kill leader of the entire league. So I believe that there's no doubt in my mind that I undervalued Crustle and I drafted it way too late, and that I should have valued it higher and drafted earlier. So one of the things that I think I didn't value enough was specifically countering threats that I think would be very hard for my team to deal with. So what I mean by that is Crustle is a good answer to Pokemon like, let's say, Zapdos, let's say Moltres, Pokemon like Charizard, or Pokemon like, Pokemon that are very good into my team, that because they have either flying or fire stat damage, because most of my team is weak to that. And I didn't think about that enough. I thought about it more on the resistance side, because I have Volcarona, which takes neutral damage to fire. I have Galvantula and Vikavolt that take neutral damage to flying. I have Gliscod that takes neutral damage to flying. But none of those Pokemon, other than maybe Vikavolt, is an answer to that threat, as in Vikavolt can answer flying Pokemon. But for the most part, those aren't answers. Those are more resistances. And I don't think I specifically valued or considered specifically getting answers to Pokemon types that are really difficult for my team to deal with. In addition, I think Pokemon that I feel like are in particularly weak to specific typings might be not as good. So for example, Escavalier was very underwhelming. And the reason why, in my opinion, is that my opponents 100% of the time are going to be bringing fire coverage, because my team is very weak to fire. And so normally the reason why Escavalier is really good is because you can surround it with a team that is very good at dealing with fire Pokemon. And then Escavalier is able to deal with the rest. And my problem was that Escavalier couldn't deal with fire Pokemon, because my entire team couldn't really deal with fire Pokemon unless I Dynamaxed. And the only Pokemon that could reasonably Dynamax and kill a fire Pokemon is Crustle. Gliscod could to a certain extent, but Gliscod's ability makes it risky to Dynamax. So Escavalier is an example of Pokemon I think was not particularly great. Another Pokemon which was surprisingly not as excited as I'd like was Scyther. We see that I brought it 6 times and it was 0-6. Scyther, I did not have a single support set. They were all very offensive oriented, and it did not do much work. And a large part is because it has 4 times weakness to rock, and it has a weakness to flying, and it has a weakness to fire. And so I definitely think that in the future, doing a monotype team, I need to focus more on offensive threats. My offensive threats need to be specifically good at dealing with the bug counters. On the bright side, in addition to Crustle being great, I'm happy with Dodler. Dodler did a really good job, even though it came 3 times. It was a tier 5 pick, is my lowest pick tiered Pokemon, and it definitely was very relevant in multiple games that I brought it. Volcarona, as expected, with the Rage Powder, was really important, and I definitely feel like I needed Volcarona or Butterfree, like I mentioned previously. One thing that I noticed, which was a problem with specifically the bug team, is a couple of things. One is that I definitely missed not having Fake Out. So 1 week, my opponent had a Whimsicott, and the only way in which I could come up with a reasonable way to deal with Whimsicott's Tailwind was to lead Golisopod and Durant and use First Impression with both of them on Whimsicott. First Impression has +2 priority, and I could kill Whimsicott before it could set up Tailwind. And this strategy, though it worked, it was completely dependent on my opponent's strategy. If they would have left Whimsicott in the back or had Protect on it and Protect turn 1, I would have lost 100% of the time. And it was just entirely based on the surprise factor, and I was able to luckily, get it because of the surprise factor. In addition to that, one thing that's really noteworthy is that Volcarona's redirection being Rage Powder instead of a Follow Me was really relevant because people, if they want to, can play around it by giving a Pokemon on their team safety goggles. And so that definitely was another noteworthy thing. And then finally, the other big one is just I felt like a lot of Pokemon on my team wanted to have a Focus Sash. So Pheromosa, Volcarona, Rabambi, Galvantula would all frequently like to have a Focus Sash. And so the Pokemon that I ended up bringing a lot were Pokemon that I feel like didn't need a Focus Sash, which were Vikavolt, Golisopod, and Crustle. And then Volcarona I brought a lot just because it supports my Pokemon pretty well. So another thing that I found very interesting is I actually ended up never Dynamaxing Durant a single time, even though I brought it 5 times. And going into it, I definitely would have expected Durant to be Dynamaxed a couple of times because Durant is almost exclusively drafted as a Dynamax sweeper, and it's typically, it's typically there to do that. But like I said, previously, is that it's so difficult for my team, which has almost, has like 9 fire weaknesses for my team to, lead and have my main Dynamax threat be a 4 times weak to a common weakness among my entire team. So some strengths of my team is my team frequently outsped my opponent's team. However, on the same sense, I didn't have a way to prevent speed control particularly well. So Tailwind was something that consistently scared me, or Max Airstream has consistently scared me. So frequently I led Pheromosa with Electro Web or Icy Wind specifically to counteract Max Airstreams. And if I couldn't get the speed control, I know I lost the game. And so I definitely feel like this is kind of partially a weakness in the Bug team, is that I wish that I could have maybe bulkier Pokemon, and I could have Pokemon that have a little bit better combined resistances. And I really wished that I could have had a fast Pokemon with Taunt, or specifically a Pokemon with Prankster to set up screens or have Taunt at Prankster speed, because that would be really good at preventing some of the big threats like Tailwind and Trick Room that, depending on my specific strategy this week, could have completely dealt with it. Overall, I was very happy with my team. Like I said at the draft, this is very close to what I would say is an ideal team for me. In hindsight, I probably would have preferred to replace Escavalier with maybe something like Silvally, just as a good bulkier bug that I could have. And maybe I would have preferred Scyther to be maybe Armaldo or another rock bug to be able to, like another rock bug that I could theoretically mix up with Crustle, so Crustle didn't have to carry as much of the load. But overall, I'm pretty happy with my performance, and I hope everyone who watched my videos and followed my matches were interested with it. I hope to join the VDL next season and maybe have another interesting, fun team. Thank you for watching.